Meeting of the Portland City Council, would you please call the roll?
Here.
Here.
Fritz? Here. Fish?
Here.
Hales?
Here. Good morning, everyone. We have 5 citizens signed up for communications. We'll take those first. And then we have our regular council calendar this morning. I have 2 requests to take things off of the consent calendar. Are there any other requests to remove items from the consent calendar besides 883 and 884? Okay, so we'll see if there are any others before we vote, but those are the 2 I have now. So, excuse me. Welcome, everyone. We have, again, 5 citizens signed up first for public communications. We'll take them in turn. They get 3 minutes each. We then have the regular agenda in front of us. If you're here to speak on one of those regular agenda items, just sign up on the sign-up sheet, and Sue will call you when we get to those. We typically allow 3 minutes per person if the calendar is not crowded, and that looks like the situation today. So if you're here to speak on one of those items, you need only give your name unless you're a registered lobbyist, in which case you need to disclose that because it's required under the city's code. We typically maintain decorum. In fact, we try really hard to maintain decorum in this council chamber. So if you agree with someone and want to indicate that, please don't applaud or shout, but give them a thumbs up or a wave of the hand. And likewise, if you feel compelled to object to somebody else's point of view, give them a thumbs down or some other polite hand gesture. But we ask that we not make vocal demonstrations in favor or against our fellow citizens' points of view in this room so they can all be heard. And with that, thank you for coming, and let's take item 872.
872, request of Colonel Moses Rosen to address council regarding the state of the city.
Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Welcome.
I was here speaking to you a year ago in March, and I didn't know what I was going to say when I sat down, and I ended up giving you all quite a tongue licking. That's not my intention today. I still don't exactly know what to say. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. But I signed up to talk on the state of the city so that I could speak about pretty much anything I wanted to. That was after my friend Jose hosted a sleepover in front of City Hall because the police were doing more sweeps on the homeless. I'm sure you're familiar with the situation. But I would have to say that the state of the city is peril, somewhat like our global situation. We're up against some limitations. There's been some talk about climate action. It's a little too late for that. We need to take more aggressive action than having a 2030 plan, because 2030 is still 15 years away. And I don't know if you all drive cars around town, but you can tell the traffic's changed quite a bit around here the last few years. There's a lot of lights you have to wait 3 or 4 times to get through. And I don't know where I want to go with this. I know that blankets are still illegal, and that breaks my heart. You know, when I set up that prayer vigil, my intention in that and what I wanted from all of that was a change in the wording of the ordinance or the code that says that blankets are illegal. That doesn't mean you have to spend any money on programs. Doesn't mean you have to change any of your behavior, but it's a moral imperative that you make things like food, water, and sleep accessible to all citizens, despite their economic condition. So winter's coming, and people will be freezing again, being forced to use illegal blankets to keep themselves warm. All you have to do is change the wording of the statute, but that seems to be rather impossible. Anyway, the city is in peril. The homeless people can't seem to get a break. It's been years of action and testifying. You're going to give $200,000 later on to Home Forward, and they may be an all right program, but at the same time, it's still giving money to landowners. It's not changing people's situation. It's just putting it off for another little while. It's $200,000 misspent, in my opinion. Anyway, you could take action. There's a bunch of people here about bikes and the 2030 plan. They got a lot of good ideas. You want to restore the faith of this community in y'all? Make a move. Take a chance. I know you got into this business to make a difference. I know you're real people, that you have feelings, that you're not hard-hearted and illogical. Although that's the way it sure seems sometimes, because I don't know what to say. I'm done talking. I'm over my time, so
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming.
thank you.
Okay. 873.
Item 873, a request of Aaron A. to address council regarding homeless issues.
Good morning.
Morning. My name's Aaron, most right to drink too.
Why don't you have a seat? We can hear you better if you're closer to that mic. Thanks.
All right, mine's not a long speech or anything, it's a short one. I came to RTD2 in mid-December 2011, not knowing what to expect. There was 4 of us, wanted a place to sleep that night. They let us all 4 in that night. As I remember, it was very cold and rainy. So I decided to become a member and give a helping hand. There has been many changes since that first night. They also give clothes, food, hygiene products, if they have them. They also have given referrals, plus give domestic violence victims a safe place to stay so they can get their heads straight. A person also can learn many skills there at RTD2. They all learn how to do security, where you can excel or not. You can also learn public speaking, such as I'm doing now, consulting, computer work, and a few others I'm not really familiar with. Then back to the streets. Out there on the streets, I notice you guys have a lot of mental health issues, problems. Places like R2D2 will give these people a place to stay safe at night for up to 12 hours. I just also think you guys need to do something with all these mental people and keep more R2D2s going on. That's my speech.
Right. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Okay. 874.
874, a request of Mike Summers to address council regarding homeless issues.
Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Mike Summers, for the record. I stay at Right to Dream 2 myself on 4th and Burnside. The line between housing and the housed and houseless is very thin. Many people in Portland are on the razor's edge of housing stability. If they lose their job, unexpected medical bills, or death in the family, these and many more things will result in losing housing. The city is expected to grow at least 250,000 more people in the next 20 years. How will we provide for those people? And if we are not able to provide enough affordable housing for Portlanders now? Although the city has the power to change this story with development happening citywide. Right to Survive strongly supports all the anti-displacement measures that are added to the comprehensive plan by the Planning and Sustainability Commission. As part of an anti-displacement PDX, we worked with your staff and Planning Sustainability Commission to add 13 new proposals and strengthen 15 more. It is imperative that the City Council keep each and every one of these policies in the final comp plan. An important new anti-displacement measure in the comprehensive plan is for the city to provide protections for renters in order to prevent them from being displaced from the housing and to ensure that they have a safe, healthy place to call home. And we believe to live up to this commitment, City Council can address the growing problem of no-cause evictions happening around Portland. Even though that's not a specific part of the comp plan, we believe that something can be done in that area now so that the city can have another tool in their anti-displacement toolbox. A critical policy was added to the comp plan, says that the city must adequately involve communities that could be adversely affected by planning and development decisions. This means that the houseless community will have a stronger voice, guiding how our city grows and develops with equity and inclusion is our ultimate goal. As part of a strong and growing group of 30 LA organizations, we are counting on City Council to keep all these important anti-displacement measures in the final comp plan. Right to Survive will continue to track the comp plan, working with broad base of community allies. We will look forward to seeing you again as public discussion opens up about the comp plan. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Okay, item 875, please.
875, request of Jerry Chandler to address council regarding houseless issues.
Chandler, you're here? All right, we'll have to give him another day. And then 876.
876, request of Sarah Carlstrom to address council regarding homeless issues.
Ms. Carlstrom, you
Is
here?
she here?
Okay, same there then. All right, then let's move on to the consent calendar. Again, we have these two items that have been requested to pull, 883, 884. Any others? Then let's take a vote, please, on the balance of the consent calendar.
Mayor, who pulled 883?
It was actually requested by the city attorney to carry it over to next week.
Okay.
Salzman.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye. Okay. Time certain? Almost. Let's deal with the two items that we pulled. And the city attorney's requested that 883 be carried over to next week, so without objection, I will do that and put it on next week's calendar. 884, Commissioner Fritz, I think you wanted that pulled, is that right? Do you want to deal with it now, or?
I was hoping to have a presentation by your staff, so are they coming to do that?
No, I think the short answer is no, so let's hold it for later. And I think we're probably close enough to 877 that we could probably start. Is that right, Commissioner Novick?
I believe so.
Okay, let's go ahead and take 877 then.
877, accept Portland's Neighborhood Greenways Assessment Report.
Commissioner Novick.
Mayor and colleagues, we want this to be a city where lots of people feel comfortable bicycling, because when people are bicycling, they're not using fossil fuels and contributing to global warming, and because they're also healthier and not contributing to rising healthcare costs as much as people who are more sedentary. There are some people, of course, who will bicycle whatever their conditions. They're daredevils. They don't care how many cars they're dealing with or how fast people are driving. There's a fair number of other people who would like to bicycle, but they are concerned about their safety, so they'll bicycle if conditions are conducive to that. Recognizing this, years ago, we decided to establish greenways, stretches of street where the assumption was we will have relatively low vehicle speeds and not that many vehicles, and they will be especially conducive to bicycling and walking. And most of these greenways have worked extremely well. We have discovered that there's some of our greenways where the vehicle speeds and vehicle counts have sort of crept up beyond where people are still comfortable bicycling and walking. And PBOT has concluded that our staff need better direction as to what to do when that happens. So basically, this report and this resolution are about providing guidelines, not hard and fast rules, to our staff about what to do when you're dealing with a greenway where the speeds and the vehicle counts are higher than they should be, and in essentially empowering our staff to take steps which will vary depending on the street and which will be made in consultation with everybody in the neighborhood to get those speeds down and those vehicle counts down. So that is the idea behind this report and this resolution. And I will now turn it over to Margie Bradway and Roger Geller, and they can tell me if what I said was wrong.
Hi, good morning. That was a fabulous introduction, Commissioner Novick. Thank you. In fact, I think you just did my first slide. So we're here to talk about neighborhood greenways. As Commissioner Novick just explained, it's a low-stress network primarily for biking and facilitating walking. And I want to note that we were the first city in the nation to have a neighborhood greenway network. We started building our network over 30 years ago. We have people who come in from all over the nation who've copied our neighborhood greenway network. That's from St. Louis, just was in town, from Seattle to London. So we have the benefit of being leaders in neighborhood greenways, as we do many things in biking. One of the advantages or disadvantages of being a leader in neighborhood greenways is that we have a very mature system. And when we put a system in place, starting 30 years ago, we couldn't realize the amount of population, the amount of growth that occurred in Portland. How do you keep the neighborhood greenways operating? How do you maintain them as the city grows? So a lot of this report is a data-driven approach to look at exactly what is happening on our neighborhood greenways. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking again, just walking through what is a neighborhood greenway, just a quick touch on the policy support for these neighborhood greenways. Then I'm going to hand it over to Roger to dive into the data that we looked at, and then our recommendations, both on performance guidelines and on policy moving forward. Next slide. Roger's going to do it. And I want to, before I dive in too much, I also want to recognize Scott Cohen, who's sitting in the front row, who acted as our managing editor for the report and did a great job. So thank you, Scott. Okay. So I think we've hit on this. There are streets with few automobiles traveling slowly and prioritizing biking and walking. So why are neighborhood greenways important? They're a foundational part of Portland's transportation system. They carry thousands of people every day, thousands of people on bikes. They create safe, comfortable places for people to walk and bike. And one thing about neighborhood greenways is they really provide connections between parks and schools. Not too many people know that the neighborhood greenway system also provides a huge part of our Safe Routes to School network. So we really focus on children when we're looking at expanding and building our network. The neighborhood greenways also create a sense of place, and Portland is known for its placemaking. You've seen a presentation recently on intersection repair. A lot of those projects happen on neighborhood greenways. A lot of our Green Streets stormwater happen on neighborhood greenways. And most of our Sunday Parkways events and Safe Routes to School events happen on neighborhood greenways. Again, these are safe streets that are good for placemaking, good for holding events. So I think Commissioner Novick said it best, that really the goal of neighborhood greenways is to create a place for people of all ages and all abilities to bike and walk. And in particular, I think you may be familiar with the breakdown of the types of cyclists. This has been before you in the bicycle plan, but really we're aiming at the 60% interested and concerned in trying to provide a place for them to travel. So there's lots of policy support. I won't dive into each one of these for neighborhood greenways, but the Portland Plan and the Comprehensive Plan are very clear that in order to meet our livability goals and our climate change goals, we need to aim for a 25% mode split for biking. neighborhood greenways and biking in particular is also a key strategy as part of the Climate Action Plan. In the city's recent growth scenarios analysis, which is comparing kind of future growth with our climate change goals, of the recommendations in the Climate Action Plan, bicycle transportation is one that currently offers the most significant and measurable reductions in greenhouse gases. So we find that neighborhood greenways is very important for achieving climate stability as well. So here's a look at the overall Portland bike network. We have 325 miles of bike network. Not all of those are what we consider low stress. Can you go to the next? This is a look at the low stress only. So the green in the middle is neighborhood greenways. The other low stress network, parts of the low stress network are trails or buffered bike lanes. So you can see in the middle there that the neighborhood greenways really are in the heart of the city and provide a lot of connectivity to other low stress corridors. Next slide. So here's an actual map of the existing neighborhood greenways, and you can see the dotted lines are the ones that are funded. These include the historical neighborhood greenways that started closer to the city, and as we build out the network, we get farther out to the north, to the east, and to the south. Next slide. So what is the intent of the report? Well, as Commissioner Novick said, we've heard a lot of concerns about neighborhood greenways. We've heard a lot of concerns about Clinton Street in particular, and we wanted to figure out what's working and what's not and take a data-driven approach. So we looked at all the data in terms of speed, volumes, and ridership, and we also looked at our existing policies, and we wanted to create an understanding of the role of the neighborhood greenway in the transportation system plan as well. So again, as I said, we're going to offer our recommendations at the end of the slideshow. Next. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to our bicycle coordinator, Roger Geller, to talk about the data. And the good news is, as Commissioner Novick said, many of our neighborhood greenways are working very well.
Great. Thank you, Margie. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. As Margie mentioned, this has really been a data-driven approach. We looked at 1,500 data points to assess how our greenways are working. And generally, the news is good. They're working well in a lot of places. Ridership is high on greenways in the parts of the city where bike ridership is high. This map just shows the commute mode split by bike by census tract. The darker, the higher. And basically what this is showing, the circle's 4 miles from the Burnside Bridge, is that about half of Portland commuters live in areas where the average bike mode split is 13%. We've seen a 250% growth in bicycle use in the city since 2000. And here we superimpose greenway counts. And basically in the areas of the city where bike use is high, use of the greenways is correspondingly high. And the greenways that are the most heavily used tend to be in southeast and northeast Portland. So there's really 3 key factors that influence how well a greenway is operating. Automobile speeds are a big part of that. And we found that more than half of our greenways are operating at 23 miles or less for cars, which is good, but about 4% are 30 miles or over, and then there's this mid-range. This is what happens when you look at 1,500 data points. You map them out. And so basically, if this is our greenway network, green is generally good on this map. Yellow is kind of in this nether area, and then once you start getting into orange, pink, and red, these are speeds that are generally considered to be too high for the effective operation of a greenway. Generally what we found was that Tillamook, Lincoln, Clinton, the Burnside Corridor, Sam and Taylor, and the 40s Bikeway all had speeds that were generally too high, mostly our older greenways. So speeds of 25 miles per hour or greater on our greenways. So we also took a look at automobile volumes. And, volumes are a key element for determining how comfortable a greenway is. We want both safety and comfort. Volumes, interestingly, are also a key factor for speed. We have the authority in the city of Portland to set low speed limits on our greenways as long as the traffic volumes are less than 2,000. Once they get above 2,000, we lose that ability to set a low and safe speed limit. So most of our greenways have, yes,
2,000 per day or?
2,000 automobiles per day, yes. So almost 3/4 of our greenways have fewer than 1,000 cars on them. Again, in this slide, generally green is good. And about 85% of them are less than 1,500. But we see some key stretches of our neighborhood greenways especially on ones that we consider especially important in our system that have much higher volumes, typically in northwest and southeast. But we're also, as we are delving into more detailed data, we're also seeing spikes in automobile use during the AM and PM peaks as cars are increasingly using some greenways as cut-through routes. And this just shows greenways where we have more than 1,500 cars a day, all of these that are listed on the left. And then when you combine cars that have greenways with more than 1,500 cars a day and speeds greater than 25 miles an hour, these are the ones that really pop out as problems. So this report includes some recommended performance guidelines, and what we're asking you to do today is to direct the Bureau of Transportation to incorporate these guidelines into our practice. And the development of these guidelines really begins with best national practices. It's also influenced by our 30 years of experience, as well as the fact that we're getting a lot of complaints from citizens that these greenways at certain levels of traffic, speed and volume are not working well. And so what we're recommending for vehicle speeds is a 20 mile per hour speed. And this is really a safety measure. In a collision at 20 miles per hour, you're 90% likely to survive. If that increases even by 10 miles per hour, it's a 50-50 chance whether you would survive a collision. We're also looking for automobile volumes of ideally 1,000 cars a day with a maximum of 2,000. And what this does is it really minimizes the exposure that people biking on the greenways have to closely passing cars. The time that you're in the closest proximity to a car as somebody riding a bike is when they're passing you. At 1,000 cars a day, on a 10-minute ride on a greenway, you're only going to get passed 7 times. Once you jump that up to 3,000, you're up to about 23 times where you're being passed. And what we're seeing on some of our greenways is that as the automobile volumes increase, people driving are getting a little frustrated, they're finding it difficult to pass, and then we're seeing unsafe passing behaviors. We don't have that documented in data, but we're hearing that anecdotally, and we're observing it anecdotally ourselves on the streets. So we want to really create as few interactions between people biking and driving as possible, and also prevent the kind of conditions that lead to unsafe behaviors. And finally, the key for a greenway is crossing the busy streets. So we want to make sure that during the busiest times of the day, people have a minimum of 50 safe crossing opportunities per hour. Ideally, we'd like to have 100 safe crossing opportunities per hour. And how you do that depends on the condition of the roadway you're looking to cross. And so that's what we're asking you to direct us to do. And with that, I'll turn it back to
Roger.
Margie. Yes.
Or Commissioner Novick, just a question. The resolution is titled Accept the Portland Neighborhood Greenway Assessment Report. So we're used to accepting reports. But the resolve says accept it and the recommendations contained therein, and then it directs PBOT to implement the recommendations. So I'm just a little unclear about, PBOT is asking us to direct them to do something, and I'm fine with that. But the report also is replete with references to the fact that PBOT doesn't have adequate resources to meet the challenges in front of it. So are we, in effect, directing you to do something that is going to require you to change your budget or seek additional general fund dollars or change any priorities in the queue? And because it is more than accepting a report. You're asking us to direct you to do something, and I'm not clear about how that relates to our budget process and our normal policy making, and I just want to be clear about what we're directing you to do.
Commissioner, I'll take a stab at that. I think that, looking at you're right, this is more than simply accepting a report. The specific language is directs PBOT to engage communities in implementing the project recommendations contained in the report, incorporate the operational guidelines into traffic operation practices, and pursue recommended policy suggestions through the Transportation System Plan update. And I think that basically boils down to we will do what we can to implement these recommendations within the context of existing resources.
I think two of the three cost nothing.
Yeah, and I want to be, we really tried very hard in this report to have it outcome-based, right? So we're talking about streets that are not performing, but our guidelines today are outcome-based, and they're guidelines, they're not engineering standards. So what your recommendation by accepting it and is kind of endorsing these guidelines. From that, I think flows some type of prioritization for if and when funding is available. We will work on these streets that are not performing well. But there's nothing in the report that says thou shall then work on these certain projects.
So we're
Oh, yeah,
setting the
but what is
policy
it-
framework, and you are then going to prioritize sequence, funding, and other things. So we're not handcuffing you in that
Well,
sense.
actually, we're both going to do that. I mean, you do make project recommendations on page 22, and that's fine. I would expect the commissioner and the Bureau to propose those projects in our capital planning process, right?
Right.
And along with other projects coming from PBOT. So I guess I don't want us to be shy about that the short answer to your question is, will this lead to expenditures? Yes. When those expenditures will happen depends on what the council does each time we do a budget.
Right.
So that's up to
And
us.
I,
Well, Mayor,
can
that's
I-
a
oh,
distinction
excuse me.
probably lost on most
Yeah.
people in the public.
Yeah.
Where it says we're going to implement the recommendations, and they have a budget cast. I mean, as I was thinking about your resolution, of preparing a resolution that accepts a report on homelessness and sets the council directive that we reduce it by 50%. That would have a budget impact, and I'm happy to bring that resolution. But I want to make sure that we set expectations. So when we accept reports, we set policy, and we set priorities. How you implement it is still your business within the framework of your existing resources.
Or
Exactly.
additional resources as we approve them. In any case, I mean, I guess I'm not troubled by the fact that we have a bureau saying, here are some projects we'd like to do, or we plan to do as soon as they are
Well,
funded.
as long as we're separating the budget decisions from the policy decisions, Mayor,
Yep.
you're free to recommend any expenditure request. But I think we have to be clear with the public about what we're signing on for today. And the recommendations are aspirational. The policy, you're asking clear direction on.
And I think that's fair. I have a related question, which is, you do have, I get the policy recommendations, I see the project recommendations. How would, given if the council accepts this report and we've incorporated these recommendations, how would these bike projects, be prioritized over others? I mean, there are other bike projects beside greenway projects. There are separated bikeway projects, there are additional bike lanes, there are, projects like the 20s and the 50s. So how do these, do they change ranking based on the council's acceptance of this report?
That's a great question, Mayor. So for clarification on how PBOT's budget works, we have our capital improvement budget project, and typically these greenways are considered operational improvements, and they live in a bucket in the CIP called the active transportation bucket, and they're the only flexible dollars really that PBOT has. 5 years ago, that bucket was $2 million. It's down to $400, and that also is the same bucket that we address Safe Routes to School and high crash corridors. So there's a lot of need for this very small, relatively small, flexible bucket. So when we think about priorities going forward, we think about priorities within that small bucket of operational improvements that's separate and distinct from our capital project. And I think we have to do, I'm looking at Roger, but we have to do both. We have to make travel on our priority corridors, and particularly those that need, say, buffered bike lanes on high-speed corridors. Those need to be a priority in certain places, and it depends on the quadrant, and depends on that community, and in other places, neighborhood greenways is going to be what we need to prioritize. And as Roger's map shows, each neighborhood is different, and the ridership is different. Roger, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just think that, the larger capital projects that we go after are typically through federal dollars that are funneled through the region. And those tend to be on a different scale than these type of projects that we're talking about here. And so the 20s Bikeway is a good example. So that's a long corridor project. It's multi-millions of dollars to do that whole project. Some of the things that we're looking at here, for example, looking at Clinton Street, You know, the fix for some of these projects, or for some of these issues that we've identified, are not tremendously expensive. We would not go after federal dollars for those kind of fixes. So I think that's the distinction, that we continue to prioritize the large corridor projects with federal funds and look to improve our system with the flexible funding we have available.
Roger, can I ask you about automobile volumes? Because in your chart, you say over 2,000 triggers changes. So the context for that is that as our roads become more congested, and they clearly are, and our neighborhood roads are more congested, cars are being displaced onto the greenways, and we can all attest to that. There are more cars. So that makes it less safe on the greenways. So my sense is it's only going to get worse, not better. And where I live in inner northeast, you know, I don't drive between 4 and 7 because I can't safely get anywhere. It's just complete congestion. So when you say over 2,000 triggers changes, what are the kinds of things that you would consider as by way of changes when you have that kind of level of congestion?
So I think both educational and engineering tools. So the standard engineering tools are some kind of physical barrier that prevents cut-through traffic on the neighborhood greenway streets. A traffic diverter like we see at 16th and Tillamook, and Clinton and Chavez, Lincoln and Chavez. We have 21 locations around the city, I believe, with traffic diverters. And there's also operational diversion, where you put up a sign that says, you know, do not enter. We've done something like that at 52nd and Division Street, where we allow buses through but not automotive traffic. Things like that are working well. But it generally is some type of barrier. It could also be improvements out on the main roads so that the main roads operate better, and the desire to divert off of them and cut through neighborhood streets becomes less attractive. But I think that's the key. And I guess I would, being an optimist, I would take exception to the idea that things are only going to get worse. I think that if we actually realize our regional and local goals, there's a good chance that things could get better.
I guess all I'm commenting on is that let's take someone going from downtown east. The Banfield between 4 and 7 is not a great choice. Sandy is now backed up all the way to the river. Broadway is backed up. And what I observe, either on my bike or when I occasionally drive, is that out of frustration, people are getting off those main roads and going into the neighborhood, and they're going at excessive speeds with a lot of frustration and sometimes anger. And that's exactly what we want to discourage.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly what we want to discourage. And, you know, the operation of our bikeway system is a key part of our strategies for accomplishing many goals. And just what you're describing is the kind of thing we need to prevent and protect so that the bikeway system continues to operate.
Other question?
This is a really excellent report, and thank you for your work on it. I'm wondering, do we have any information on the demographics of the people who bike in greenways? Do we know if we're being successful in investing in these greenways and encouraging more women, families, communities of color to use them?
We have some really good data at the regional level. Metro did a Oregon Household Activity Survey back in 2011. And so at the broad level, at the regional level, what they found is that demographically, for example, a surprising finding was that people of color bike and walk at higher rates than do white people, and that's true throughout the region. So that's kind of at the broadest level, and also people at all income levels are well represented in terms of bicycling. Things break down by gender. Generally, that in Portland we see a great gender disparity, more men bicycling than women. On the parts of town that we've identified as being the most comfortable, we're starting to see, and we've been seeing for years, the proportion of women climbing. And that's a very good kind of ready indicator that we can look at. So in parts of town, like on the Greenway system, even on streets like Williams and Vancouver, we see 40% of the people that we count are women. And in, you know, the far reaches where we recognize that conditions are not yet as comfortable for bicycling as they are in the inner city, we see women at 8, 9, 10%. So that kind of gives us a good idea of, you know, who we're appealing to.
Okay, thank you. That leads in nicely to my next set of questions. Do you have a timeline for the 3 north-south greenways in East Portland that you've identified in the recommendations?
Can you move forward to the slide? So we've got a slide on the
Which one do you want?
to the ones that the last slide, yeah. So as Roger mentioned, their future projects are typically we pursue grants, and we have been successful in pursuing grants. And so the Rodney project is almost complete. The 20s bikeway is currently underway. It's about 50%. The hundreds is also underway, and 130s is underway. The 100 and the 150s will be going under the kickoff process next construction season in the summer. So they're about a year out, but they're all happening within a year window, or kicking off in a year window.
And what's the planned public engagement for the ones in East Portland?
So I'm not the project manager. There's project manager for each of these, but we will have a lot of public dialogue about these greenways. It was important to us that the recommendations today are guidelines and not standards, because we want project managers to go out to the neighborhood, have a conversation about these guidelines, have the ability to make tweaks, to get public input on how they function, and go from there. So Clinton Street project is actually already kicked off, and we have an open house scheduled for September 12th. And we'll get input on our proposed design. I imagine we would do the same for the ones in East Portland.
And why is there no connection, greenway connection from East Portland to downtown?
So going back to the Portland plan and the bike plan, typically when the neighborhood greenway system started, and Roger has a lot of this historical context, who focused on the 3-mile trip. And so it was a lot of the neighborhood greenways really focused on that 3-mile circumference around downtown. And we know now that we need to serve the entire city, and we have a lot of work to build it out. So we are concentrating a lot of effort on East Portland, but it's going to take a while to build our system out. Do you have any?
I think the other key is that, greenways, you can only develop that type of a facility on certain types of streets. And so our system also relies on having good low-stress bikeways on the major streets. So there are techniques that also create, something that's better than bike lanes, be it a buffered bike lane or a physically protected cycle track. So those have got to be part of the system that works well. And as you get closer to the main center part of the city, where the traffic intensity increases, those are increasingly the types of facilities that have to be incorporated.
Well, I am concerned, though, that there isn't an east-west connection on Greenway. You can't do it.
One of our top priority projects is also the 4M project, which is Mill Market, Maine, that basically runs from the boundary with Gresham, and it runs into the Lincoln Bikeway, which will then go all the way in.
I didn't see that on the.
It's not funded. That's because it's not yet funded. It's one of our highest
In the plan,
priorities
but not funded.
for seeking funding.
There is an
but it's not yet
aspirational route
funded.
there. Okay.
Yes, there is. At
So
the
then my
end.
last questions are about Southwest. What's the plan for improving Southwest?
So Southwest, and the report notes this, that greenways in Southwest will not have the type of prominence that they do in sort of the old streetcar grid neighborhoods, as well as even East Portland. Even though it's discontinuous, you can still make it work. The topography creates very few continuous streets in Southwest, and those streets that are continuous tend to be, the flat ones tend to be the busiest ones. And so the bicycling strategy for Southwest is really to make those larger streets work for bicycling. Like a street like Barber, for example, needs to have a protected bikeway on it. We've seen examples of that on Southwest Multnomah, where we built a cycle track. We've seen examples on BH Highway, where we've built buffered bike lanes. It's really the strategy for Southwest, because of the topography out there and the street pattern, is really to make the larger streets work. Greenways will still have a role out there, principally as connectors to those larger streets, but they won't be the types of long corridors that you see in other parts of the city.
Roger, following up on what Commissioner Fritz asked, what's the status of the big vision we talked about a couple of years ago, linking Gateway Green to a trail along the Banfield to downtown?
Also, one of our highest priorities that it's now called part of a project called T-HOP, which is
T-HOP.
T-HOP, or THOP if you want. It is a connector between Tillamook. It then builds that piece under the I-205, connecting into the I-205 pathway and Gateway Green, and then continues out further east along Holiday, Oregon, and Pacific. So it's creating a greenway corridor that links across I-205.
And is the continuing challenge figuring out how to coexist with the railroad?
Not there. It's ODOT right-of-way. It's mostly just gaining the funding at the regional level to do that project.
But again, in terms of east-west connector, isn't that project potentially very beneficial in linking?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's why it's one, it is also, it was identified by the Bike Advisory Committee as a top priority. It's one of our agency's top priorities to seek funding in the federal funding rounds.
So this
And I think
November.
that was your resolution many years ago to say, keep hammering after the,
I think Parks and Transportation were
Yeah.
looking at it, but there was also a tremendous opportunity to do some housing development along that corridor and get people out of their cars and into bikes. But there's the railroad piece is complicated.
as you go further west, yes, we've identified the segment that's only ODOT right-of-way, and we believe we can deal with that.
So going back to Commissioner Fish's initial questions about funding and priorities, I understand the difference between the major grants and the operational. If we're looking through an equity lens, we ought to be thinking about how to provide safe bike facilities for people who have nothing over improving the ones that we already have, which might not be ideal. So how is PBOT managing that challenge?
So the projects that Roger's talking about have come up through our TSP process, and I'm not the lead planner, that's the Transportation System Plan, and we have criteria for that, and there's an equity criteria that we look at. And so we look at equity, safety, other connectivity, other goals, and going into the next funding rounds. So the next funding opportunity at the state level, ODOT enhances in November, and then at the regional level, Regional Flex Funds is this spring. We'll be taking those projects that meet our Transportation System Plan criteria.
And Commissioner, I think it's important to note that there, as Roger was saying, there are things that we can do to improve the functioning of existing greenways that are really quite low cost, putting in some diverters and some speed bumps. So I don't think that it would make sense to say we are going to do nothing to improve the performance of our existing greenways until we've made major new investments throughout the city, any more than it would make sense for Parks to decide it's not going to do anything for parks in the inner part of the city before we've built a bunch more parks in the outer east side.
That's a nice strawman argument. I actually wasn't suggesting that. I was suggesting that if there are funding requests going to be coming to the council in the next budget, that we look at where can we provide some safe bike facilities, for instance, on Powell, on Barber, elsewhere. I would be more inclined to support that over funding for additional greenway in areas that already have them.
Understood, thank you.
So are you finished with presentation? Because I have a question about Appendix C, so I wasn't sure how far down.
I think we did skip over one slide, so if we can backtrack, we've bounced quickly. We've talked about this. And so just quickly on the recommendations regarding policy, as you're maybe aware, we're going through the process of updating both the comp plan and the transportation system plan. We had an ongoing conversation with the planners at PBOT about how to best address the neighborhood greenways in the TSP, but this report is not the place to do that, so I want to be clear to your question, Commissioner Fish, about what we're asking you to do today. We are not updating the TSP. What we do is we're recommending that our planning staff, working with Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, evaluate and replace conflicting policies to make it clear that neighborhood greenways allow diversion and allow a stress-free or a low-stress network. And so I can walk you through the different objectives in TSP policy 6.13 if you want, but today we're just recommending that that's taken care of as part of a different process. That's all I wanted to hit on.
Okay. Other questions about that? So my question about Appendix C, and we have a lot of people that want to speak on this item, so I don't want you to go on a great length, but
Appendix C?
that's the tools and designs.
Yes.
So you mentioned sort of this in passing, in that this is an opportunity to look at what's working and what's not working. And, I think it's fair to say that over this 30 years, Portland has tried a lot of things. We've been experimental in the ways we've tried to incorporate bikes into an existing street system and then make it safer and better and more convenient over time. I think it's also fair to say that some of those design tools have worked better than others. Without getting all the way down into the weeds of this kind of diverter versus that width of a lane, Roger particularly, but both of you, so what have we learned in terms of our toolkit? Are there too many tools in the kit? Are there still some more things that we're not using that are being used elsewhere in the world that we should be using? I'm just curious about sort of the state of the toolkit. Are we using the right tools? Are we using so many that we're confusing people, or can we use more? And which ones didn't work, and why are we not using them anymore? At least a summary view of that, I think, would be helpful to everybody.
Sure.
And I'm interested, so.
Well, what we found, we've done research over the years and found that speed bumps, a regular pattern of speed bumps rather than traffic circles, are much better at creating a consistent low speed on a roadway. I think we know that physical diversion, barrier diversion works really well, especially if you do it in conjunction with, some green paint that lets make sure that people biking go to the head of the line. At signals, I think that there's some tools like pinch points that we've employed once or twice that probably aren't working that well. We haven't really used chicaning as a tool to slow cars on streets. Chicaning is where you make the street just kind of weave a little bit, and there's ways to do it with barriers or with parked cars sometimes, and so cars just don't have a straight shot where they can just kind of speed down. They have to, pay attention, basically, and drive a little bit slower. That's something that we haven't really done, I think in part because it's very expensive. Seattle has an example where they spent millions of dollars to do something like that. Our streets are a little bit narrower, so we haven't really tried that. I think generally we're satisfied with the toolkit that we have, and we do a lot of evaluation. Our engineers are very good at evaluating what we do. Are there more tools out there? I think we just started experimenting with operational diversion, where we just put up a sign that says, don't go this way unless you're a bus. And I think we were pleased with how that worked at 52nd and Division. It may not be the thing that we'd use everywhere. We're looking at creating streets. Other jurisdictions around the world sometimes do one-way streets for segments on neighborhood streets. That's something that we really haven't done very much of yet. That would be an inexpensive and perhaps effective way to create diversion as well.
What they do in England is to have a jet out of the sidewalks to create a one lane and have a yield or a stop so that you have to slow down at that particular pinch point, and I think that works really well.
Yep, that can
And
work
it's
well.
not that expensive either.
Right. Yeah, there's things that we like that.
Roger, we used to hear from the Fire Bureau that they had a little bit of concerns about speed bumps in terms
Absolutely.
of response times. Have we found some kind of détente on that issue?
Oh, yes. I mean, we always work with the Fire Bureau. They're good partners with us, and I think it was our putting in a lot of speed bumps that first brought us together, and they developed a emergency route system that we agreed not to touch, basically. And now we're working with them to develop and employ fire-friendly speed bumps. So these are speed bumps that don't go across the entire street. Instead, they're on one side of the street, then stair-step down to another side of the street, and so on. And we're working with them on that, and that allows them to kind of weave through the speed bumps without going over them and being unduly slowed down. So, yeah, I think it's a very good relationship we have with the Fire Bureau in working this stuff out. We don't put stuff down that they don't want.
Great. Other questions? Thank you both very much. Do you have some invited testimony, Commissioner, or are we just going straight to the sign-up sheet?
We're going straight to the sign-up sheet.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's do that.
We have 16 people signed up. Will the first three come up? And that is Terry Pablinski, Terry Parker, Alex Reed, and they'll be followed by Chris Anderson, Amy Subak, and Isabel McTee.
Good morning. Please try to be brief. Obviously, we have a lot of people signed up, but make your point, so welcome. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm Terry Dublinski Milton. I'm on the board of Southeast Uplift and I'm Transportation Land Use Chair for North Tabor. I would like to specifically speak on 3 points of the report. First of all, the peak vehicles per hour. One of the main ways I've been doing outreach on greenway safety for at least 4 years, and I've spoken at dozens of neighborhood associations. And this is the big area where we really need help, is the commute time, because a lot of our greenways will work mostly, and then will fail at the AM or PM peak hours. Sometimes it's just one direction. But for a full network to work, if you really want your children to safely get to school, it's all about the pinch point, the one bad block, because you have a parent that'll say, that block is way too busy because all the commuters are speeding to Providence, we will not let you go. And so they drive their kids to school. The number of pedestrian and bike crossings per hour, this is the second point, where it says you should have a minimum of 50 crossings per hour, but a preferred 100 per hour. Again, you have to look at the weakest link. And if you have one arterial on this route on your way to school and it is too dangerous and you can't get across, your parent is going to say, no, you cannot ride to school. And then I'd like to talk about urban form for just a couple of seconds and what goes on outside of the 85th percentile. Speed bumps are great for most people, but you get that one red truck that speeds down the greenway and hops all the speed bumps. And that's why, as part of an urban form, a lot of outreach I have heard is that you should have diversion at regular intervals, every 5 to 7 blocks. So you know that that red truck that's hopping the speed bumps will be turned off. Then those trucks won't be on the greenway. There we are. That's what I want to say.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Who'd like me next?
Morning. I'm wearing my own hat again today. My name's Terry Parker. It is only equitable that if cars are restricted from using greenway streets, gas tax revenues and other motorist-paid taxes and fees also need to be restricted from paying for them. Likewise, if motor vehicles are restricted on greenways, bicycling needs to be discouraged on high-traffic volume streets such as Hawthorne, Sandy Boulevard, and streets such as Lower Division and Halsey, where parallel bike routes are only a few blocks away. If motor vehicle travel lanes can be removed on Foster, thereby adding a combined 1,180 daily hours of engine running time, then bicycle lanes can be removed from streets like Southeast 26, where they create a safety hazard on such a narrow right-of-way. The boisterous and unruly squeaky wheel of the bicycle lobby has infiltrated and, for the most part, taken over control of Peabody and is unethically city subsidized. The public process is broken. Peabody, citizen, and advisory committees have become stacked decks dominated by special interest and alternative mode advocates with little or no seats at the table for the primary financial stakeholders. Approximately 80% of the trips in Portland, the metro area, are by car. Nearly 10% of the jobs nationwide are tied to the auto industry, most of them family wage jobs. City streets are getting more congested with road diets and traffic diverters. Peabody is continuing to make the overall situation even worse. What will it take to end the discrimination towards drivers, reverse the city's prejudice anti-automobile policies, and create more family wage jobs? What will it take to stop profiling motorists as the origin for all safety issues? I'm going to defer from my written testimony here for a minute because, Commissioner Fish, you were exactly right. The Peabody is not doing anything to accommodate the increased automobile traffic, and that's what's causing the cut-through traffic. We have to have better roads and less road diets and that sort of thing. Finally, the bottom line here is that adult bicyclists paid license and user fees need to be implemented as the primary source of funding for bike lanes, greenways, and other specialized bicycle infrastructure. And motorists must have an equitable representation on Peabody committees that is proportionately linked to the mode split and who supplies the funding. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Alex Reed. I am a Southeast Portland resident, and I'm adopting an infant daughter in a few months, so safety and getting around is top on my mind. I'm also part of Bike Loud PDX. I encourage you to accept this report and adopt the recommendations and view it as something that will help fix an urgent problem, but won't do everything. So there's streets where people get around with their kids, there are greenways that people don't feel safe on, and this will help with that, with the too many cars going too fast. There's other things with greenways that many of which you all have touched on that this won't fix, and I just want to remind you of some of those. One is that in a couple years ago, when the city was facing budget cuts, part of the cuts to PBOT were of city funding to new greenways. We used to put in city money towards creating new greenways. Now, my understanding is that we fund somebody to apply for federal grants, and that's the only money that goes into constructing new greenways. So just wanted to remind of that reality that if we want more connections in East Portland and Southwest Portland, we need to figure out a way to get more funding towards transportation for that. And lastly, that there are more problems on the greenways that weren't even touched on this report. There are some that existing that have stop signs every 2 blocks. And if we want people to get around by bike, then convenience is something that matters in how people choose how to get around. So that's something that we're going to advocate at Bike Loud, that the Portland Bureau of Transportation address at a future time. It's not as high as safety, but if you want people to get around by bike, it needs to be fast to some extent. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Next 3, Chris Anderson, Amy Subak, Isabel McTighe. They will be followed by Jarek Kransky, Gerald Fittipaldi, and Paul Jeffrey.
Good morning.
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 So,
Hi, counselors. Hello.
Morning.
Good morning. We've been trying to be not too distracting.
Just give us your name and anybody else's name you want to mention.
My name's Amy Subak, and this is Isaac Subak, my son. And this is Irma, my daughter. My husband. I wanted to testify in support of this Greenway plan for a number of reasons, one of which is that my family has a severe history of heart disease, and being able to use a bicycle as my primary form of getting around means that I'm able to be healthy, and I'll be able to live to see my children grow up. That's very important to me. Another thing is, it's just a lot more fun to ride my bike to take her to school than it is to have a kid screaming in a car seat, as many parents know. And the other thing is, it's very important that Portland continues to be sustainable and equitable and livable. And as we increase our population over the next 15, 20 years, the more people we have riding bikes, the easier it is for us to ride bikes, the fewer people will be driving, and we'll be able to keep traffic lower and easier, and it'll be better for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Well said, despite the distraction.
Yeah, we're used to it.
Table pounding is permitted when you testify here.
I think he objects to this somehow. I'm not sure.
She's been riding her bike to school since how old? Since she was 3, and she loves it.
And I really like it. It's tough. I was just thinking like, oh, wow.
And what I'd like to say, I'm Chris Anderson, and thanks for your attention. I think that safety versus maintenance was a losing frame last year, and the funding stuff, I think we all know that. The problem is that it divides Portlanders instead of uniting us around stuff that we can all agree on, which is sustainability and a healthy city. So I'm an entrepreneur, and the question, what I'm wondering, what I'm asking myself is, the return on investment for greenways and other bike infrastructure is just so staggering. It's hard for me to see how any other posture than all in is reasonable. So hopefully we're all in. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And Irma, we like your sign. We all love Portland too. Thank you. Morning.
Good morning. My name is Isabel McTighe. I'm a junior at Cleveland High School on Southeast 26th and Powell. First of all, thank you for all of your work in regards to supporting bicycling in Portland. I've been biking here since I was 4 years old. I've grown up biking everywhere. Our family never had a car, and neighborhood greenways were a big part of what helped me feel safe and confident as a bicyclist, especially as a young person where you can feel more threatened by cars. And I'm hoping that the adoption of this report will encourage more of my peers to also feel safe and confident on the roads, on their bikes, instead of just opting to drive right away when they get their license. So yes, I'm in strong support of the adoption of this report, and thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, please.
Next up are Jarek Kransky, Gerald Fittipaldi, Paul Jeffrey, followed by Ethan Frager, Doug Klotz, and Emily Guys.
Good morning. I think you're first, Garrett.
Good morning, thank you. Mayor Hales, members of the commission, my name is Garrick Kransky. I'm the Advocacy Director with the Bicycle Transportation Alliance. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Honored to represent our 4,000 members here today in urging you to support the resolution for Portland's Neighborhood Greenway report and recommendations. With this report, the Portland Bureau of Transportation is providing critical information about how we make our neighborhood streets safe, and I hope the city will take the advice and put it into action. Long ago, the city of Portland asked residents to choose neighborhood streets when riding a bicycle. And the reasons were simple. It was cheap and easy for the city to build bicycle boulevards with paint and signs, and the routes are comfortable to ride because they have only a few slow-moving cars. And this 1980s era solution is no longer working in a few key places, and it's time for the upgrades recommended in this report. We're hoping that the City of Portland will advance the adopted policy goals to increase the number of people walking and biking, and the connections between increases in auto traffic congestion, flat bicycle ridership recently, and increases in population should be clear. We're not doing enough to make bicycling safe, convenient, and accessible, and to make that a transportation choice for everyone. So it's having an impact on everyone regardless of how they choose to get around, and we're really grateful to see this report and hopeful to see action that makes it safer and easier. So now is the time to invest that political and financial resource into these hardworking streets. The report makes it clear that we need to divert auto traffic onto some of our main streets to help all of them work more safely and efficiently. And I just would urge you to please pay special attention to the need for new traffic calming and diverters on these neighborhood greenways as you review the report and think about its implications. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Gerald Fittipaldi. I'm the president of a new group called Bike PSU. I'd like to thank you for creating the Neighborhood Greenway Assessment Report. We appreciate the time you put into that. And I just wanted to say that a lot of these fixes for the greenways to make them better are very easy and cheap. In other parts of the world, mayors send out people to Copenhagen, Amsterdam, whatever. They come back, and a week later, they put things on the ground. They don't wait a year. We've been pleading for a year, more, 5 years, to improve Clinton, like dating back to August when an advocacy group formed here. There's been nothing but more planning, more questioning, more everything, where in New York, they come back, they say, we're going to do interim diverters, interim protected bike lanes, whatever, but we're going to do it now. We're going to get it on the ground. We're not going to wait a year. We're not going to spend tens of thousands of dollars on planning and trying to figure things out. They actually do something, and if it doesn't work, they try a different way, but they get it done. And I think that's important.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Paul Jeffrey. I'm a Portland citizen. Thank you for letting me talk. Mayor Hales, you've done a great job leading with many issues. One of them, I think, is the most important one, is climate change. This is a huge problem, and it doesn't have a lot of easy solutions. It seems so overwhelming to start tackling this, but so horrible to think that if we didn't do anything, when we had a chance. So one chance presents itself today. Greenways are one way that we can give people a safe choice to get around without using their cars. It's not just about bikes, but I might add this is the only part of our otherwise unfulfilled 2030 bike plan that got built. But it's about alternatives to driving. It's about getting the carbon out of the air. Greenways are in bad shape. Too many cars, too much speeding. Kids don't feel safe. Adults don't feel safe. I don't feel safe, and I'm one of those daredevil bike riders. I don't like riding on greenways anymore. I don't like getting intimidated and honked at by cars, one after the other. cars are using these greenways instead of the roads they were supposed to use. There are fixes. They are relatively cheap. It is a thing we can do. Please, let's not blow it.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay.
And the next three are Ethan Frager, Doug Klotz, Emily Guys, followed by Ted Bueller, Glenn Traeger, and Reza Farhoudi.
Good morning. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Ethan Frager, and I'm 12 years old and I attend Hosford Middle School. I believe that we should have more diverters on greenways and speed bumps and things like that, all the forms, and because I don't feel safe riding on them anymore, frankly, and they connect me to school, and so I have drivers have been quite aggressive towards me, like screaming at me, throwing things at me, actually. So, yeah, I'd like to feel safer riding on them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good morning,
Hi,
Doug.
I'm Doug Klotz. I live in the Richmond neighborhood. We've been talking about bikes a lot out there. I look forward to this Greenway Assessment Report being adopted by council. This will give the PBOT staff some much better tools to use in the maintaining and improving greenways and building new greenways. We're looking forward to the improvements planned for Clinton Street this year, and I hope this report will be useful in making those improvements. Thank you.
You. Good morning.
Morning. My name is Emily Geis. I'm one of the co-chairs of the group Bike Loud PDX, and we are the people wearing green and holding up the signs in here. So I wanted to come and say that I love the greenways. I think they're an essential part of our transportation system. And because I'm able to go where I need to on the greenways, I don't need to own a car. And because I don't need to own a car, I'm free from the burden of car payments, insurance, gas, and because I don't need to spend thousands of dollars a year maintaining a car, I was able to save that money, and I used it to go back to school. I got a degree as a graphic designer, and I was able to graduate with no debt. Because I had that degree and I had no debt, I was able to start a new career and land a great job that I love. And so please, please approve this report, and most importantly, please direct funding to improve our greenways and expand them so that other people can enjoy the same benefits that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Great story. Thank you very much.
And the next three, please come up. Ted Bueller, Glenn Traeger, Reza Farhoudi, and they will be followed by Barry Jostal.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having us here. My name is Ted Bueller, and my favorite neighborhood greenway is Rodney. I own a house on Rodney, and I'm 2 blocks away from a diverter that keeps cars off it south of me, and I'm very happy about that. I just want to say thank you very much for putting together this document. I've read most of it. I haven't read all of it. I intend to read it all. I think it's great stuff. For years, I've been working with different advocacy groups trying to encourage Portland to improve the neighborhood greenways, and I've been very pleased with the results so far. But a year ago, I'm also co-chair of Bike Loud PDX, the other one, and I'm on the Boise Neighborhood Association board. And so we've been working with PBOT. We've been asking PBOT and you guys for traffic control on these neighborhood greenways, and I think that this document is what we need to deliver it. I'm fully supportive of all of the policies and procedures in it. I just want to tell you the story of when we were encouraging Portland residents to sign postcards to Mr. Novick over here asking for better diverters on Clinton. Myself and some others put up a card table on Clinton around 34th or 31st or something on the grass, of course, not on the street. And we could look down the street and we could just see a whole line of cars in the middle of the street and all these poor bicycle riders cowering in the door zone because there were aggressive drivers and people on bicycles tend to be sort of modest, meek folk. You know, they don't tend to try to put themselves in the middle of the road like they're actually supposed to. And all these people looked kind of hunted, and they all looked a bit harrowed, and we asked them if they wanted to sign a postcard. A lot of them were in a hurry to pick up their kids at daycare, but a lot of them were like, oh yeah, I do, let me tell you why. And they said, in the past, this was a great street for bicycling, but because the city has increased population without increasing bicycle mode share and any number of other things, there's just lots more cars on the road, and they no longer felt safe. They had anecdotal stories about other parents who wouldn't let their kids ride, and they didn't feel comfortable taking their kids and trailers on Clinton Street. All those people are not riding their bikes with their kids to get places right now. They're either driving cars or staying home or taking the bus. My guess is a lot of them are driving cars. Today, you guys have the opportunity to pass this and to make the improvement in quality of infrastructure that's necessary whenever you increase the density of population. I encourage you to pass it and to inquire regularly of Roger and Margie and Scott. How's it going? Are we there yet? Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm here to support the greenways. I think it's an important thing for the city council once in a while to look at how our streets are being used and to reallocate use depending how conditions change. It is important to realize that in order for us to be a sustainable city, we have to encourage bikeways and the greenways. I live in Northwest Portland, and I'm right now somewhat concerned about all the new development that's going up. If you just see all the cranes and stuff, it's probably the fastest growing area in the city. But our bike infrastructure is lagging much, much behind. I don't think there's an easy way to get from Northwest Portland to downtown or Safeway. I think the greenways is one way to solve this problem, without spending a lot of money in new roadways, bridges, and infrastructure. So I think it is important for the council, for the Department of Transportation to look at ways to move the people in Northwest Portland, not just the people that live there right now, but the people that will be moving in the next 5-10 years, in order for them to get safely, to their work downtown.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor Hales and members of City Council. Thank you for allowing me the time to speak. The short notice of this agenda item prevented many of my neighbors from testifying today, but I'm here on their behalf to support the assessment findings, policy updates, and recommended performance guidelines. With
your name into the record.
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Reza Farhoudi. I am on the Pearl District Neighborhood Association Board, and I'm the member of the Bicycle Advisory Committee. And we want to support this plan, the PDNA does, because developing a city that is friendly and accommodating to bicycle riders of all ages and abilities is incredibly important if the city wants to meet its long-standing mode split and carbon emission reduction goals. For Northwest in particular, building out a better greenway network would help not only people who live here, but also the significant populations of those who commute here or visit for medical appointments, shopping, recreation, and other activities. The well-connected street grid and high-density urban form in Northwest Portland create a dynamic, walkable environment, but unfortunately, our bicycle infrastructure has been much lagging compared to parts of inner northeast and southeast Portland. The biggest problem we have is that without better volume management in the form of automobile diversion, Northwest Greenways consistently experience the highest traffic volumes in the entire city, with every greenway seeing more than the maximum recommended volume of 1,000 vehicles per day. Therefore, they are relatively high-stress locations to ride a bike, particularly for families and people, for families with children and the elderly. As the report indicated, there has been a notable lack of investment in Northwest Portland, and the disconnected nature of our bicycle network has led to stagnant mode share compared to the rest of inner Portland. Bike lanes are few and far between, and where they exist, they're narrow, they can drop without warning. I-405, Burnside, the railroad create major barriers to connectivity, and the neighborhood greenways lack almost any form of traffic calming or crossing treatments, and are in fact greenways in name only, with just signage and sharrows. So Northwest Portland has some great projects in the pipeline for bicycling, including the Green Loop, which will create a safer north-south route through downtown, and the Northwest Flanders Greenway project, which will hopefully create a new crossing at I-405 and a safe crossing at Nadeau Parkway at the Steel Bridge. But these are long-term projects that will take 5 to 10 years to come to fruition. Our neighborhood desperately needs more immediate relief with our bikeway network and have several projects in mind that can be done for relatively cheaply, including installing temporary diversion on Northwest Johnson Street, creating a safe and clearly marked route between Nato Parkway and our numerous east-west greenways, and implementing traffic calming on Northwest Overton Street by Fields Park, where there's been concerns about speeding traffic through there, and also implementing some of the recommendations from the Pearl Access and Circulation Plan that this body adopted in 2012. In summary, our neighborhood urges the City Council to accept the plan as recommended by PBOT and seek additional funding that could be used towards building out both our short-term and our long-term needs for the health, safety, and livability of our neighborhoods. Instead of being an afterthought, Northwest Portland could be one of the best places in Portland to ride a bike, as long as bicycle travel is encouraged and promoted by implementing PBOT's recommended tools, policies, and performance guidelines. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And Mary Jo Stahl. It's our last speaker.
Okay, anyone else? Come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Barry Joe Stahl, and I'm a bike nut. I have my bike out front right now. And I think it's pretty rotten that our city has kids trying to ride their bike to school, as we heard this morning, having your citizens, Mayor, acting aggressive towards them. I think the thing that we have to really celebrate is leaders set the tone. I personally, sitting back here looking at the scar on my leg when a teacher on his way to work ran a stop sign and hit me in the bike lane, and that was over 10 years ago. I'm still bearing the scar, and we're still having bicyclists dying on our streets. And it's because no matter how much green paint you put down on the surface of the street, if somebody's going 30 miles an hour, that doubles the chances of them killing the person they run into. So we can either accept the fact that we have people discouraged from bicycling, which my experience otherwise has shown is quite a healthy and enjoyable activity. We're going to stop killing people, folks. That's what it's about. Killing people who ride bicycles. As we could see, there was a ghost bike down Caddy Corner down here 1 block away. I was out front protesting, not bike safety, but I was out protesting the night that that happened, and there was nothing about that night that's any different than today. That little strip of paint isn't going to stop the car from running over the person. The little icon on the street surface is not going to stop the car from running over the person. What stops the car from running over the person is, one, our leaders say that you don't threaten our children on their way to school for any reason, especially if they're riding a bicycle, but for any reason. And that we stop killing people by simply separating the bicyclists from the cars. Now, my friend Moses Rosen wrote a great poem over 20 years ago, which means that our past is someday perhaps going to be your future, and we promised a candy bar in your tank. No, we said we wanted 1 out of every 10 streets to be reserved for bicyclists. We should do that more than Sunday parkways. We can do this, folks. Leaders set the tone. Stop killing us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, my name is Charles Johnson. We all want a sweeter PDX, especially sweeter for bicycle riders. If you go on facebook.com/sweeterpdx altogether, you'll find a video dated Friday, the 21st of August, where a driver assaults a bicyclist with his car and with his body. The driver of a Lexus, license plate number 864 GMC, which is being investigated by the police right now, at the corner of Yamhill and 76, not accidentally tried to kill somebody, but road raged, chased a woman, and accosted her. So I hope that the police commissioner will look into that. And I hope that people in the Portland Bureau of Transportation will look at this video on Jody Cullen's Facebook page and make sure that in all neighborhoods, strangely enough, as you know, Yamhill in the 70s and the 60s is Mount Tabor Park. I don't cross any streets with green paint on them there, but lots of people bicycle with children there. So I hope that you will not just accept this report, but you will use it as a tool to invigorize your action to create safer spaces for bicyclists and get us more people out of their cars and into bicycles, and especially see that the victim of this assault that I mentioned gets good victim support services from the police department. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. So are there further questions for staff before we take action on the report? If not, then I'd like to hear a motion to adopt it.
So moved.
Second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Saltzman,
Well, thank you for this excellent report, and I fully support all the recommendations. And I guess my only words of advice are that, I'm not an avid bicyclist. And I think part of the problem between bicyclists and motorists is there exists a vocabulary that the bicycle community knows and understands, but your average motorist does not understand, what the green stripe means. How do you behave when, I had to ask this years ago, how do you behave when you turn onto Southwest Stark and half the street is a green shade? I'm not sure what the right behavior is. I also understand that we have the signage, just looking through Appendix C is extremely complicated. And, motorists are not going to understand these signs. I think the bicycle community gets it, they understand them, but we've got to make sure that the motorists do to make sure that people are safe. So I think there needs to be a dramatic simplification of our signage and the way we communicate how we want people to behave, motorists to behave on greenways and on other streets. And I do wonder, do we have simple signs saying you are on a neighborhood greenway street as opposed to sharrows? Again, sharrows, I don't think people really fully understand. A simple sign saying these next 3 blocks, the priority is for safe bicycle commuting. I think that would go a long way. I think people want to behave safely. They want to know how to behave correctly, but it can be confusing. And, on top of that, 30% of drivers at any given time, from recent evidence from our law enforcement, are busy texting or talking on the phone. So they're distracted, or they may have a kid in the back seat crying. So I think we've got to go, I'm a strong supporter of grade-separated bike paths. I think that's what we need to have in this city, and that's where we should be putting more of our resources. I realize it can't be done everywhere, but we need to put more emphasis on that, because that to me is really what's going to get those people that 60% of the people who just aren't going to do it unless they feel safe, make them feel safe. So again, good report, keep it up, and thanks for the testimony today. Aye.
Novik.
Thank you, Margie. Thank you, Roger. Everybody else at Peabody who worked on this. Thanks, everybody, for coming here to testify. And I want to thank my colleagues for not staring daggers at me over the fact that we only reserved half an hour for this item when we should have guessed that it was going to take longer. Commissioner Fish, thanks for noting that the resolution isn't simply about accepting the report, but also giving policy direction. I think actually one significant fact of the idea that council is adopting this report and giving that policy direction is that we will put up some more diverters, I think. We will have some more speed bumps, and we might all get calls from people saying, wait a minute, my commute's gotten even longer because there used to be this street I cut through and now it's slower. And now we can say, well, actually, that's a neighborhood greenway, and we actually have given direction to PBOT to take steps to ensure that it's used as a greenway. So thanks again, everybody, and I'm really pleased to adopt this report. And again, we don't have the resources to do everything that we would like to do, but in this issue, there's some steps that we can take that aren't as expensive as a lot of the other stuff that we desperately need to do in the city. Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you very much, everybody, for being here, and for the staff for the great report, also the committees working on this. We are becoming denser. There's a lot more people living in Portland. There's a lot more people driving in Portland. There's a lot more people biking in Portland and walking and taking the bus. And so we all need to share. I love the bumper sticker, share the road. And we have to all remember that there's more of us, and it's going to take longer to get from A to B. So And in fact, the getting from A to B is often not the main point of the journey. Yes, you want to get from A to B safely, but you also want to have an experience while traveling, whether it's walking, driving, or biking, which is safe and allows you to converse with families or interact in a friendly manner with your fellow citizens, our fellow citizens. So I have been taken to starting off a little earlier because I know it's going to take longer, and evaluating my choices in terms of transportation. I do have to just brag that my sister, who is 2 years younger than I, just cycled for 4 days straight to get from the Irish Sea to the North Sea cross country in England, and along with her partner and their 13-year-old twins. So it was interesting. I was just in the United Kingdom for an extended vacation, and to see the strategies used there in little tiny streets where you wouldn't dream of going 30 miles an hour because you can't get around the corner at that speed. So there's some structural things that we can do, and I appreciate Commissioner Novick emphasizing those. We embrace the Vision Zero concept that we are going to work towards no fatalities, no crashes on any of our streets for any of our modes. And we all need to take responsibility for that, whether it means all of us stopping properly at stop signs, whether we're walking, driving, or cycling, all of us respecting the rules of the road and thinking about each other. That's part of this strategy, and it's something that I certainly embrace, and I commend Commissioner Novick for doing so also. We do need to prioritize funding for places that have nothing and for people who have nothing. And so I'm hoping that we can, as we start thinking right away about setting our legislative agenda for next year, thinking about how can we get the state to step up to their obligations to provide safe routes on the state highways that are some of the main arterials, and some of them don't have sidewalks or bike paths, and so we need to all work together on that. So as with most of the things that we do here in this chamber, this is another milestone and a great end of this particular, accepting of this particular report. It's also the start of the next phase of the work, and it's continuing to work. So I thank everybody for your patience, your diligence, your willingness to engage. We're all in this together. Aye.
Fish.
I want to first thank Leah, Margie, and Roger for the good work and the presentation and outstanding report. And I want to thank Steve for the leadership he has given us on a whole range of issues. Already this year, we've taken up Vision Zero. Sunday Parkways continues to be a great success. And soon we'll be taking up bike share, which I strongly support. And each of these is another marker along the way to fulfilling a commitment we made as a council to be a bike-friendly city. You know, a couple of comments we heard today I just want to reflect on. One was the gentleman who talked about the return on investment. And I'm really glad, Mayor, that increasingly we are bringing that into these conversations. For example, in our utilities, we used to shy away from talking about return on investment when we did green streets. And as a result, we neglected to tell people that it costs less money to move away from gray and move towards green. So whether you are an environmentalist or not, if you make the case that it's a more cost-effective approach, it seems to me you're going to get more support than if you frame it just in terms of an ideological proposition. And so when we talk about return on investment, limited amount of money with a big return, including a safety dividend, that should bring all of us together, because that's what we should be focused on. I also appreciated the gentleman who talked about not feeling safe. And, you know, whether you've lost a member of your own family, as Commissioner Fritz and I have, to a traffic fatality, or whether you know someone who has suffered in a traffic fatality, you never want to have that happen to someone that you know and love. And the basic buttressing of Vision Zero is that people would start being more considerate and change their behavior on the roads. And to the young woman I saw this morning texting while speeding down Broadway, slow down. To the gentleman I saw yesterday on Sandy, weaving in and out of traffic so he could get a 15-second advantage, slow down. To people in my neighborhood who treat a red stop sign as discretionary, please stop. I talked to the chief yesterday, Mayor. He came to brief me, as he does monthly. And he said that citations are up and distracted driving, but frankly, we just don't have the resources to be everywhere at once. But I hope the Bureau continues to do intensive enforcement actions in various places, because apparently some people aren't just going to they're not going to get the message until they have to pay a steep fine. And then they can actually balance whether it's worth texting and being distracted and being on their phone and risking other people's lives, whether it's worth incurring all those fines. But the fundamental piece of Vision Zero is changing behavior. And I think we have a lot of work to do to get that message out, because I think a lot of our neighbors, a lot of our fellow citizens are frankly behaving in an irresponsible and selfish way on our roads, and we have to call that out. We have to stigmatize that behavior. Finally, having joined the mayor and others on Sunday at Sunday Parkways, it is exhilarating to be on these low-impact streets and be able to ride safely. I mean, it's transformational. And a Sunday with all the precautions we take is not exactly how it works during a normal workday. But it sort of reminds us what it is to be on a dedicated bike pathway that's safe. And that ought to be the goal. We can't shut down the city every day like Sunday Parkway, but we can build in the technology to make it as safe as possible. My comment earlier about my sense about things getting worse is not meant to be an indictment of any particular policy. It's just that we have a lot of capacity, we have limited roadways, and my sense is that people's behavior is not heading in the positive direction. That's all I meant. People are cutting corners, creating routes through parking lots, through dry cleaning spaces. All of a sudden, because everyone's in such a damn rush, they're putting everyone else at risk. And Vision Zero was supposed to remind us to slow down and stop being so selfish and not set a goal every day of gaining a minute on our commutes, but remembering that our behavior has impacts on people. So I fully support both the policy changes and the recommendations. I think this is a outstanding report. And again, I want to thank Commissioner Novick for his steady leadership in this area. Aye.
Hales.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Novick and PBOT for bringing this report to us today. Just reflecting on what we've heard, not only from all of you, from the Bureau and from the community that have testified, but also from the council. It seems to me that we approach the challenge of making Portland a better, safer bicycle city from strength. We have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of problems to solve, but we approach this challenge from strength. One, we have policymakers, elected policymakers, who believe in Vision Zero. You've heard my colleagues talking about that this morning. We believe in that goal, and we will work towards that goal, and that is the right goal. And we have administrative leadership in the Portland Bureau of Transportation that passionately believes in that goal too. Just talk to Leah Treat for a minute or two about Vision Zero and you'll see what I mean. And it's not just Leah. And that goes back actually some years. I was thinking about that a bit, Roger. You and I have worked on these issues for more than a year or two. Next month, we will mourn the passing of Vic Rhodes, who was our PBOT director, one of Leah's predecessors. I had to sign travel authorizations for him to go to a really exotic location because he went to Omaha, I believe, 6 times in order to negotiate with the Union Pacific Railroad so that we could have a bikeway on the Steel Bridge. And he got it done, among many other things. Vera Katz used to call him our counterculture city engineer. And that leadership in the Bureau has been consistent about making Portland a city of all modes and a city of safety. And that work continues. So we value you as professionals telling us how to make this work. And then we have advocates in the community. We have the Bicycle Transportation Alliance and Bike Loud and individual citizens who come here and make the case or who serve on our committees again and again, Doug, because they care about these issues and they're passionate about it and they live it in their own lives. In fact, I remember when we made the radical decision to make it legal to ride a skateboard on city streets, our chief financial officer's son, Tim Grew's son, came to the hearing and helped make the case for that. And for that was pretty transformational, I think, for a lot of us to hear that advocacy. So I want to thank you all as advocates because that helps helps keep us moving forward as well. So I am optimistic. I believe we will be that city, and we will be that city because we do have elected leaders who share the vision. We have a bureau that gets it and knows how to get it done, needs more resources to get it done, but knows how to do it. And we have citizens that expect this work to be done. As the police commissioner, I get these wonderful and terrible text messages when our police bureau almost every night successfully de-escalates a situation involving someone with mental illness. I know we're making progress against our goal of being a better bureau in that way. And of course, I get the tragic reports when we lose someone. And I know that we are in this year in the worst year ever for gang violence. And yet, despite that, we've lost more Portlanders to traffic violence than we have to homicidal violence. So that's how serious this problem is for our fellow citizens who are at risk until we achieve Vision Zero. So this is important work. I want to thank you all for doing it. I enjoyed Sunday Parkways as well. I'm going to start doing some commute rides because I went on the policymakers ride and a number of citizens said, hey, you should do that more often. So actually on Monday, I'm going to commute by bike and start out at the Clinton Street Coffee House at 26th and Clinton and ride in with folks that take that trip and try to take some more of those kinds of commutes with, again, advocates who know the situation on the ground. Once again, our neighborhood associations are so critical in this because neighborhood volunteers and folks that know exactly what needs to be done in each neighborhood to make this work are critical as well. So there's a lot of work to do. I think this report is an excellent map. Let's go make it real. Thank you all very much. Aye. Thank you. Let's take a momentary break and then we'll go back to the rest of the calendar. Since Jeff Baer is here, I think we will move to item 884, which we pulled from the consent calendar. Could you read that item, and we'll bring Jeff up to answer questions.
884, accept recommendation and reaffirm city's commitment to responsible, sustainable procurement by considering the presence of conflict minerals when purchasing cellular devices and radio subscriber units.
Mr.
So
Fritz
thank you
has
very much to
questions
staff
about
for
this.
being here. I pulled this off consent because I want to make sure that the Portland citizens understand the issues and how you're addressing them. So thank you very much for being here.
Good morning, Mayor Hales, members of City Council, Jeff Baer with Bureau of Technology Services. And just to reiterate what this is, it's a resolution and to continue to affirm our support for responsible practices where we influence the materials in the supply chain, especially when it comes to devices that have these conflict minerals in them. And just to also emphasize that this has been a very collaborative effort between the Oregon Coalition of Humanity, Bureau of Technology Services, and also Procurement Services with Christine and her team. And just to talk about some of the things that we're doing, we purchased.
Before you do that, I'm not sure that everybody at home knows what conflict minerals are.
Very good. Good. So the way this works is that where we buy products and where manufacturers source their materials, this in particular is about what they call 3 TGs. So it's tin, tantalum, tungsten, and gold. So those products are in a lot of electronic devices. And so where those manufacturers source that from, we want to make sure that they are in conflict-free zones. And so this the federal requirements have provided that they have to declare where those sources of materials are. And from what I'm being told is that all of our current cellular and radio providers are in compliance with those current regulations and with this resolution.
And from the resolution, it talks about It says the United States Senate and the House of Representatives have found that armed groups bear responsibility for mass atrocities in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. The International Rescue Committee has found that more than 5.4 million civilians have died and countless more remain at risk as a result of attacks conducted by armed groups in the Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo. And these armed groups generate hundreds of millions of dollars each year by trading in conflict minerals and operate with little accountability for perpetuating economic crimes, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, including sexual violence and the recruitment of child soldiers. So this is something that the United States government has been addressing and that you have been working to make sure that our supply chain doesn't include these metals
That is correct.
from the Democratic Republic. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
And Jeff, just to follow up on that, so the federal government makes the certification, and then we follow that, or is there some independent judgment we have to make?
And maybe Amanda might be able to speak to that.
Well, for the,
Could you tell us who you are?
oh, yes, my name is Amanda Ulrich, and I am the coordinator for the conflict mineral movement in Portland with Oregon Coalition for Humanity, and also a volunteer ambassador with Women for Women International, specifically working on their program in Eastern Congo. And so for publicly traded companies, they are required under Section 1502 of the Dodd-Frank Act to turn into the Securities and Exchange Commission if they have identified that anywhere in their supply chain they are sourcing minerals that may be from the Congo, and further, if they are, where those particular minerals are coming from in their supply chain. And so there's systems already in place for those companies to audit their supply chains, and some companies do so independently and separate and apart from that requirement. And so for any company that's publicly traded, you can verify through the EDGAR system on the Securities and Exchange Commission the paperwork that they turned in.
Okay, and how do we know if the geographic, if another country has been put on the watch list? You said Dodd-Frank focuses on the Congo.
It focuses on the Congo and the surrounding areas. And so, you mean, how do we know if there's another country, like, can you clarify what you mean?
Well, you said Dodd-Frank was very specific in identifying a particular region, but how do we, if we're going to comply with this directive, how do we know when another country or region is in play?
You mean like another part of the world?
Yeah,
or-
another country has some of the issues that the Congo has or something like that. How would that get lofted up onto the screen here for people to see?
Well,
State Department under Dodd-Frank make some kind of certification? I see nodding heads, so.
yeah, I see what you're saying. No, this is focusing on this region of the world because they have some of the largest supplies of these minerals, and also it's the largest death toll since World War II. And basically it was a grassroots movement that started the awareness. So, I mean, I suppose to answer your question, I mean, if there was another region of the world that had this concentration of minerals and egregious things like this happening, I suppose you would have your nonprofits of the world that would raise the attention of it. But that particular piece of the Dodd-Frank legislation is specifically addressing this region of the world because it's just such a huge humanitarian crisis.
Thank you, and thanks for raising the profile on this issue.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Other questions?
How does the average consumer know whether their product that they might purchase is conflict-free?
Well, one resource you can utilize is the Enough Project. They're based in Washington, D.C. They're a nonprofit. We actually work with them on this. This is a nationwide movement, conflict-free. There's been other cities that have passed similar resolutions and universities across the country that have, and the first United Kingdom city recently as well. And they have ranked the top publicly traded electronics companies in terms of how conflict-free they are. And you can go to their website and you can look and see how those top companies rank. And then beyond that, the Enough Project is available to talk about any companies that might not be the top traded or they're more private. They have resources where they can help to inform you as a consumer where the company that you're looking at falls.
So if somebody's watching and wants to find out more about this, could you give us a website that they could go to?
If you Google the Enough Project, it will pop up. I can't remember their exact URL, but it's like www.enoughproject.org or something like that.
Thank you.
Enough.org.
Enough.org. Thank you very
And
much.
Jeff, are there particular companies that are essentially on a do not buy list that you would then have to follow that list?
I don't think that there currently are. Looking to Christine to see if that's the case. But I do know that the ones that we are buying from today are in compliance.
Are in compliance?
Yes.
And just Commissioner Fish, Christine Moody, Procurement Services. This resolution is really our first step forward as far as complying with the federal requirements and supporting those federal requirements for documentation and supporting that documentation to the city so that we can review that and see if there's some changes that we need to make in the future for our buying decisions. As Jeff said, currently, where we're buying all of our cellular devices and radio devices, they are in compliance. But this is kind of an ongoing effort of making sure that those companies that we are doing business are providing that information publicly so that we can use that to inform our buying decisions.
Well, I'm pleased that Commissioner Fritz pulled this because I, for one, have a better understanding now of what we're talking about, so thank you.
And I do think that this does set the stage for future evaluation for other microprocessor-based electronics, because there are other areas aside from cellular and radios that we could look at, and we'll continue to look at our supply chain.
I will add, so Intel, they actually began offering the first conflict-free microprocessor in 2014. Their CEO is really committed to issues in the Congo, and I've been in touch with their conflict mineral team at Intel, and they actually also invest in a conflict-free mine in Eastern Congo because they also believe in supporting mines that are conflict-free, to also be supporting the people that live in the Congo that are affected by the mining in their country. And so this resolution couples nicely with our area in general being a leader on this issue.
Thank you for reminding me about that. I think when I met with you several years ago, Beaverton was considering passing something like this. Did they do so?
No, they were waiting for Portland.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
We love it when that happens.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
you. Other questions for this team? Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming to illuminate this. Thanks.
Thank you.
And is there anyone else that wants to speak on this item? Please come on up. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Ann Shannon, and my daughter and I are co-founders of Run for Congo Women, 1,000 Sisters, Outcry for Congo. We were instrumental in advocating for the original legislation for conflict minerals. My daughter is an author of 2 books on Congo, and both my daughter and I have traveled to DR Congo and have met extensively with victims of the violence there. And first, I do really want to thank the Procurement Office and the Technical Services Bureau for their responsiveness, and just it's so gratifying to live in Portland and have a government that is responsive to the deep concerns of the citizens, and that we do have an impact. And this, to me, this resolution really is an example of that. So first, I do want to note that there is a very broad base of awareness and support for policies that we take that can stop the violence in Congo. My daughter, as founder of the Run for Congo Women, we have had yearly events, and actually some more than yearly events, that were 100 to 500 women and children and men show up, and they reach out to the community asking for donations to support the victims of violence there. Oregon Episcopal School has raised $38,000 for women in Congo. St. Mary's has had several events asking for or educating their students about the conditions in Congo. So, and my daughter, when she speaks here in Portland, draws from 200 to 800 very enthusiastic supporters. So there are literally tens of thousands of Portlanders who are very concerned that we do everything we can to stop this violence. And I will say that when the conflict minerals legislation was first passed, within a month, I was at a barbecue, and Congolese nationals were coming up to me so grateful for the work that we had done, because all of their families have been affected, and we do have a Congolese community of expats here. And my daughter's second book is about the family of one, it's about one family, and a friend of ours who she's the cheese steward at Fred Meyer's, and she's lost 28 family members to this carnage, and plus 6 children have been abducted. And so we have a lot of people in our community who are vitally concerned. And I do want to say that, you know, the support of Intel and the leadership that they have exercised in relationship to this, to me, this resolution, you know, in a way supports that kind of leadership in industry, because Intel wasn't always for this legislation, but they heard how much, and they really got how much Americans do not want Congolese blood and sufferings in the products that we carry in our pockets and that we use every day for hours on our computers. And so, oh, I'm out of time. Oh, sorry.
Oh, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning.
Morning, I'm Rob Hadley. I'm a local educator, and I'm also a co-founder of the Oregon Coalition for Humanity. We started this process about 2.5 years ago, and it's been quite an education for us, both in working with the city, and again, I want to echo previous comments about the great work that's gone into this from a number of people at a number of levels, and working with you as city commissioners and the mayor's office to help make this happen. I believe strongly in my work as a Holocaust educator that a budget is a moral document, and how we spend our money says something about who we are as a city. And I think as a city, making this first initial step, really, and that's what I believe this is an important first step to really stating who we are as a people, who we are as a city, and what we value, and how we spend our money on these resources. You asked the question about how do we know, how does the public know what a conflict-free phone is? The answer is there isn't one, and that's the truth. We haven't got there yet, but that's the push that we, I think, as citizens, as cities, as universities across this country, are pushing to help companies like Intel you talked about earlier to really make that happen, and it is having an impact. And I hope that today's action by the City of Portland will be the next in that domino effect to help other companies realize we have a responsibility to know what's in our products and to help our consumers know what they're consuming. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would it be too much to ask for me to be able to say one more thing?
Sure, go ahead, please.
Okay. Now I'm going blank. Oh, dear. God, I'm sorry.
You're so surprised that we agreed to it that
Yeah. No, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
No, we appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else wants to speak on this item? Good morning.
I'm Alicia Atma, the Executive Director of the Atma Foundation, and we worked with Congolese for 4 to 5 years in Eastern Congo. So definitely understood and heard the stories on ground and how these mines affected the families. I am up here just to clarify your questions, Commissioner Fish. If there is another country or another community, perhaps, that is dealing with the same issue, then yes, it's going to be the State Department that you would find out if that was added to the list.
They already certify human rights abuses generally under other law, so that makes sense.
Yeah. And second to that is, how do you know if something is conflict-free or going in that direction? The Enough Project is a great website, but also corporate responsibility in different companies should be addressing it as well. So if you're Googling Samsung or something like that, they should be able to address it in their corporate responsibilities. And eventually, hopefully in the near future, we will have actual conflict-free stickers that will be on phones or computers or things like that. Right now, the safest approach is looking for the Intel microprocessor. that's how you're going to know that you're much closer to conflict-free than otherwise. So I just want to clarify those questions.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that.
Have a good day.
Okay, then let's please take a vote on the resolution.
Salzman.
Well, thank you for pulling this, Commissioner Fritz. I'd sort of forgotten about this. I know we did it several years ago, and it's nice to see that it's come to fruition, and a great plug for Oregon's largest private employer, Intel. Thank you. Aye.
Novik.
Jeff and Christina, really appreciate your work on this. Amanda, appreciate your and everybody else's work. And thank you, Commissioner Fritz, for pulling this item. I actually noticed a few weeks ago, and I emailed Jill Island at Intel about this, there was an article that said that more than 80% of the 1,262 companies that filed compliance reports with the SEC last year said they couldn't identify whether their products contained conflict-free minerals. But Intel was one of the companies with the highest compliance scores. So that's the 80% figure is unfortunate, but it's good to know that one of the biggest employers in the region is a leader on this issue. And it's good to know that the city is as well. Aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you to the advocates for bringing this to my attention, and it was several years ago. I apologize that it kind of dropped off my to-do list with various bureau reassignments and other things happening, like election campaigns and such, which took a lot of my time. I'm really grateful to the staff who, especially Christine Moody, who didn't need my continual asking about it to continue working on it. Jeff and your predecessor, Ben Berry, also is obviously paying attention and cares as much as we do about these egregious issues in the Congo. And so I appreciate being able to talk about it today. Dora Perry on my staff had done some great work on it. Christina Nieves has now taken up the mantle of that. And it's really important. So I'm back, so if you need, and I have more free time, so if you would like me to help work with Beaverton or other jurisdictions, obviously, one of the reasons I pulled this to the regular agenda is I want people watching at home to know about it. And it was certainly news when you brought it to me. We're growing in awareness. We need to continue to publicize it, so count me in. Aye.
Fish.
Yeah, Commissioner Fritz, thank you for pulling this to the regular agenda. Thanks to everyone who came out and testified. I had the misfortune the other night of watching a presidential debate, and it seemed like the only thing that unified all the candidates is that they wanted to either repeal just about everything that I agree with, or they were against almost everything that I support. And in the mix of on the anti side, in addition to wanting to repeal Obamacare, there were people saying we should repeal Dodd-Frank. This is a part of Dodd-Frank that probably the public doesn't know as much about. And I'm delighted that you've brought this to our attention, and thank you. And to the gentleman who said the budget is a moral document, I am going to shamelessly borrow that line as we go into our new budget season. Thank you very much, and thank you for shining a light on this issue of corporate responsibility. Aye.
Hales.
Well, thank you. This was a great discussion and an opportunity to illuminate this issue. And thank you, Commissioner Fritz, and to our professional staff for once again making Portland a leader in doing the right thing. I like that we are in that place. And the fact that we have a prominent local business that is a leader as well is a great example, and we should hold up that example and encourage every other Oregon business that has anything to do with technology to follow Intel's good examples. Obviously possible to be profitable and responsible at the same time. So let's have others follow that lead as well. So there are lots of ways in which budgets can be moral documents and in which we can exercise social responsibility in how we spend money and how we invest money. And this is an important piece of that. So I really appreciate this discussion and your eloquent advocacy here today and around the world. Thank you. Aye. Wonderful. Thanks. All right, let's move on to the regular agenda. We have a half a dozen or so items there to deal with, starting with 894.
894, amend contract with Rosenbaum and Watson LLP in the amount of $458,000 per year for a 5-year total not to exceed amount of $2,243,834 for the independent compliance officer and community liaison for the Department of Justice Settlement Agreement.
Thank you. This is second reading. Unless there are any council questions, we'll proceed to a vote. Roll call.
Salzman?
Last week, Ms. Sadat and I got into a little exchange about the types of focus groups that are going to be funded under this effort. And I was sort of questioning, for instance, why we have an LGBT focus group for consent decree that focuses largely on those with mental health challenges. Somebody approached me afterwards and said, how about a focus group for those with mental health challenges? So I hope that's part of the list, and I'll look forward to an update on that. Great. Aye.
Novick?
Aye.
Fritz?
So we do have to dedicate the resources necessary to support both the staff and volunteers who are working on the settlement agreement and its resolution. I greatly appreciate the work that's being done, and I also am committed to continuing to work hard on it. Aye.
Fish?
When I asked Senator Gordley to be my representative to this process, I made a commitment to her that she would have the resources and the support to make this a successful enterprise. And she continues to devote considerable amount of time and energy to the success of this process, which is incredibly important to the city and obviously to honoring our obligations under the DOJ settlement. And I think this is a reasonable request. Aye.
Hales?
Well, thank you. And Ms. Sadat, to you and your team, you have our full confidence, and that's why we're here today, to make sure that you have the resources to do the work. There's a lot of work to do here in building public understanding and building confidence in how we do this work, as well as making sure that we fully and completely comply with this mandate to change how we police our city. So all of us are fully committed to that, and that's why this is a unanimous vote, and I'm very pleased to say that. Aye. Thank you. 895.
895, amend contract with Moore Iafocano Goldsman, Inc. to increase contract amount by $29,215 to provide additional consultant services to include the Portland 5 Centers for the Arts facilities in the city's ADA Title II transition plan.
Good morning.
Great, good morning. Carl Lyle with the Spectators Facilities Program at OMF, and with me Danielle Brooks, ADA Program Manager for the city. So this is an item with a simple contract amendment to add ADA assessment of the Portland 5 facilities. And the context for this item is the new spectator facilities and venues activities fund description, which was established with this year's budget, really which clearly now explicitly includes oversight of the city-owned performing arts facilities as well as the other spectator venues. So that's kind of the context for this amendment, and this is some of our sort of early work in trying to bring those facilities into kind of our understanding and managing that portfolio of assets. So the city, just in context, the city owns the 3 facilities operated by the Portland 5 Centers for the Arts, the Keller Auditorium, the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall, and the Antoinette Hatfield Hall, which of course contains 3 theaters within it. So they're all operated by Portland 5 under the guidance of MERC, Metro MERC Committee, but they are city-owned facilities, so there is a city responsibility to bring them into our own Title II transition plan work under the ADA. So this contract amendment will allow the original consultant team that assessed the other 30-some buildings in the city's portfolio for ADA barriers. It'll allow the same team to sort of bring into those reports the same kind of information about those five theaters in 3 facilities. And we anticipate that work will be done early next year, so after the holidays, with a lot of the same consultant team members performing that work for efficiency and consistency. It'll cost $29,215. And then following that assessment, we'll be able to work with our partners at Portland 5 and in the Office of Equity and Human Rights to begin to put together a multi-year program, solicit some public input on the barriers and the work done, and then put together a multi-year work program to begin addressing them. And some of those barriers are likely to be pretty easy things to address through routine maintenance and other things, and others are likely to be longer-term, bigger issues that we'll have to talk to Portland 5 about how they might get addressed in the future.
So as the council liaison to Portland 5, I just want to compliment you for a very succinct statement, because you hit all the questions that we had, and that's why I fully support what you're doing today.
Great, thank you.
Other questions or requests? Great. Thank you both very much. Anyone want to testify on this item? If not, then it passes the second reading next week. Thank you. 896.
896, accept a grant in the amount of $95,239 from the Federal Emergency Management Agency for the fiscal year 2014 Fire Prevention and Safety Grant.
Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman.
I'll turn it over to Kim.
Good morning. I'm Kim Kozmas with Portland Fire and Rescue. I'm here for the hopeful acceptance of this grant.
Okay, any questions?
I do. So this grant is for education of people who are deaf and hard of hearing on the importance of smoke alarms and other assistive devices. How will it be implemented?
Well, we have some plans that we are working on putting in place. We will be working with the Oregon Association of the Deaf and also with the Public Utility Commission of Oregon, which will have the Telecommunication Devices Access Program. We'll be able to do some outreach depending on what they say is the best way to outreach to that community. The TDAP program with the Public Utility Commission of Oregon, they rent those devices out to individuals that are hard of hearing. And so we would be able to do outreach by having pamphlets to put in with those, along with other things that we will be able to have as handouts and other avenues to reach those individuals and do it correctly. Because I know that it is very sensitive with this community as to how they are reached and
So will the Fire Bureau be doing the outreach, or will these
Yes.
community groups?
Yes, no, we're just bringing them as stakeholders in to discuss what we're going to be doing and what the best route would be to take to do that.
And have you had any conversations with the Commission on Disability?
No, not that I'm aware of at this time.
So I would suggest that should be a very at their next meeting to get on their agenda, because they will certainly have some suggestions for
Okay.
how to do that outreach. And how are you planning to decide who gets the assistive devices? Because obviously this is a nice amount of money, but it's not enough for everybody who
Yes.
needs one to get one.
Well, and that's where in the stakeholder meeting that we will be doing a litmus test, just to determine what items or things we should be looking for, what questions to ask as to who will actually qualify to get these devices for smoke alarms.
So again, I would encourage you to talk with the Office of Equity and Human Rights
Okay.
and to have some conversations about how to
Definitely.
make sure that those who are most in need are the ones, rather than the ones who are most connected to
Yes.
being able to ask.
Yes, I totally agree.
Okay, good suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other requests or questions for Kim? Thank you very much. Anyone else want to speak on this item? If not, then let's take a vote, please.
Salzman.
Aye.
Novit.
Aye.
Fritz.
I appreciate very much the answers to the questions and applying for and getting the grant from the Federal Emergency Management Agency. I do believe it's important to, I'm surprised that the Commission on Disability hasn't been involved in designing the project, and I want to make sure that as it's implemented, there's an opportunity, obviously, I would think, for Portland Fire and Rescue staff to be continuing education on equity issues, and in particular, their service to people who may be deaf or hard of hearing in the regular course of their work, as well as in this program. Aye.
If I could share a piece of information, is that both Karen Brooks and Deborah Harrison have been two of the key players in putting this grant together. And so they have made contact with a lot of these groups, and we will be definitely making sure we check all the right boxes and do it correctly.
Okay. Do we ought to
Fish.
give-
Aye.
Hales.
Aye, thanks very much. Appreciate that discussion. Okay, let's move on to 897.
897, authorized contract with Sargent's Towing for abandoned vehicle towing and storage.
And I believe you want this returned? Is that correct?
Exactly, Mayor.
So without objection, I'll refer this back to Commissioner Novik's office. And 898.
898, amend contract with Starfish Aquatics Institute, LLC, to provide lifeguard certification and auditing services at multiple Portland Parks and Recreation locations from the original contract amount of $100,000 to $220,000.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm quite excited about this. I've been assigned a speech by my staff. Usually I just toss it over to staff, but I'm going to also ask Eileen Argentina to come forward just in case there are any questions. So pay attention. This is the presentation.
All right, we're in.
This is an ordinance to amend an existing contract. It involves ongoing budgeted work in Parks Aquatic Program. Specifically, it's a contract for lifeguard certification and safety auditing, two cornerstones of our safety program. This contractor provides safety audits that are conducted without advanced scheduling and follow-up evaluation of our safety responses to ensure continuous improvement. The firm also certifies our lifeguard training program, and I would have to say I'm very proud of our services that we've provided to the families of Portland all summer, including some pretty amazing activities and rescues by our lifeguarding staff. The emergency ordinance is on the regular agenda because it involves amending a contract for more than 25% of the original amount. It was originally awarded pursuant to an open and competitive request for proposals process. Late in that process, the Bureau discovered the successful proposer would not meet our insurance requirements, and then the next and only other proposal was selected. However, at that point, the Bureau needed to make the transition as quickly as possible in order to minimize any gap in these critical services. And so I guess reading between the lines, we may have underestimated in the first place is the summary of this. The request for proposals anticipated a 3-year contract with an option to extend for 2 years for a total of 5 years. The unexpected delay during insurance caused the Bureau to have to execute the contract for 2 years at a cost of $100,000. The 3-year amount would have exceeded $100,000 and would have required extra staff time associated with getting to the council agenda. The vendor has performed well, and this ordinance will fulfill the original intent to contract with this vendor for a total of 5 years by adding 3 more years. Did I get that right?
Okay. Questions for either Commissioner Fritz or Eileen?
Just a comment, Mayor. When I had the honor of being the Parks Commissioner, we had, I forget what summer it was, Eileen, but we had a near miss in a very crowded pool. And it's because of the training that the lifeguards received that they were able to save a life. And we did a debrief afterwards, and I learned a lot about the extensive training and also the role that Starfish Aquatics plays in doing the annual training. And the Bureau has an enviable record of keeping our pools and our aquatic programs safe. It's a very difficult job, and it's in part because of the quality of the people, Commissioner Fritz, that you hire and who provide services, but it's also because of this training. And so we are literally saving lives because of it, and I'm very grateful that we're making that investment.
Okay.
Saltzman.
Does anyone want to
Are
testify?
we ready?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, no, I got myself confused and thinking that we were already voting, but we'll see if anyone wants to speak on this item. Got ahead of myself.
Now we're good.
Okay, there is none, so now we'll take a vote.
Roll call. Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Fritz.
Congratulations on a successful summer. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Hales.
A very busy summer, yeah, and these lifeguards do amazing work, and having them properly trained means we have lots of great, safe days out in the pools, so thank you. Work well done. Aye. Okay, 2 more items in their second readings, 899.
899, authorize a contract with the lowest responsive bidder for construction of the sewer level remote telemetry monitoring, demolition, and installation.
Okay, roll call, please.
Thank you. Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Hales.
Aye, and 900.
900, authorize a contract with the lowest responsive bidder for construction of the Skidmore Pump Station upgrade for an estimated $731,000. Project number. Saltzman.
Aye.
Novick.
Aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
I'm going to vote aye, but I also want to thank both the BES and the Water Bureau for participating in 2 events recently, Mayor. One was the night market, and having Bull Run Water there was a big hit with people that were
Yes, it was.
that were hot, and also for both teams participating in Sunday Parkways and providing information to the public through tents and also fresh Bull Run water. So appreciate their efforts on that. Aye.
Hales.
Me too, thank you. Aye. And we're recessed till 2 PM.